Hi everyone. I wanted to take a moment and respond to this comment, partly because it unlocked a few things for me that I hadn't really thought about before in this same way. And that's one of the beautiful things about healing out loud and sharing our stories and comments and perspectives is it allows us to continue to process the things that we get triggered by, for example, or things that we don't realize still have an impact on us. In this case, I wasn't triggered. It's not something that has an impact for me other than to further validate how emotionally abusive with intention my mother was. And while on some level I don't need that, it still has a comfort attached to it. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? I'm so sorry, Marnie. I felt your hurt as I was imagining 11-year-old you being forbidden to spend time with the only person that was actually being kind to you at the time. And then to get that sick, smug postcard in which your mother jokes/threats not to do it again. Ugh, that was one nasty woman. I found it a bit funny when you mentioned that Robert's mom was a child psychologist and yet kind and loving person. My narcissistic mother was actually a child psychologist too, but was, and still is, evil and twisted in her own ways. After being treated by her and my father, who is also a psychologist, the way I was my whole life, I kind of lost all hope and faith that there are actually some normal psychologists out there. Although I wish that Robert's mom did something to help you out and not just let you go like that. She does sound a bit enably to me.
Hi. Gucci is fine. She went to camp while we are away. Hope you are enjoying the camp. How is your art coming? Do you have any boyfriends? Don't get another Robert. We miss you and love you very much. Please write. Love, Mommy and Daddy.
So the reason my mother stopped me from seeing Robert, what she told everybody was that because I was boy crazy. And so she sexualized the whole thing for other people to make it look like I was going to do something, true to Marnie form kind of thing. And she'd say, oh, he's also older than her. Okay, we were 1 grade apart. We were both children. And narcissistic people love to destroy the relationships that their victims have that provide them any sort of support because they don't want their victims to have somebody to run to. And I think that my mother stopping me from seeing Robert was because he was showing me that I was lovable. It wasn't just about the support and the escape, because it did anger my mother a lot when I would run away and go hide at his house. There was a time I hid underneath his bed and he had to tell his mother, and the police came into the room and they coaxed me out from underneath the bed and sent me back to my abuser. Not that they didn't try to help, they just, like a lot of first responders even today, didn't know how to help. Telling a child, your mother loves you, she's so worried about you, you've just aligned with my abuser, I can't tell you now what's happening. Also, children, the abuse is normalized, right? We don't know that we don't deserve it. So if we tell on our abuser, they're going to know that we're a bad child. It's complicated. But just taking a child who runs away and throwing them back over with the parent is not an acceptable thing to do. Anyway, I know I'm going off on a side note here, but I think it's important because I brought it into the story to explain that I know the police were trying. This wasn't the first time I ran away. This wasn't the first time I talked to the police. There's a pattern forming, and yet they still sent me back. There was nothing Robert's mom could do. There wasn't. If the police couldn't do anything, there was nothing she could do. I don't know if there was even really social services at the time as we know it now. I know there was something, but I don't think it was as big an agency as it is now. We are talking the 1970s. Robert's mother's way of intervening which helped me a lot. And so for anybody out there who has their hands tied, because emotional abuse is something that children don't actually get taken away for normally. And it's hard to prove and it's hard to pinpoint. So for somebody out there who's struggling watching a child suffer, I can tell you what Robert's mom did for me was provide me with a sense that I was worthwhile, because she loved on me and she cared about me and she was always kind to me. And in my little girl world that was filled with so much emotional torture, that contrast was massive and something that I will forever be grateful for. She is one of those people who filled my cup along the way that let me know I have enough value that I should fight for myself and that I'm worth fighting for. So, in terms of enabling, and I know you don't mean anything sideways from this comment. I mean, seriously, your parents are psychologists and they were abusing you. So I get exactly where you're coming from. Sadly, a lot of narcissistic people go into helping professions. Their cognitive empathy is really good. That's why they're such good manipulators. And I have a lot of survivors whose parents were social workers, who were heroes in some way, who were psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors and nurses and law enforcement and all of that. And I think that makes it exponentially more difficult for the child who's being abused by them, because their profession says that they know everything to that child and also receives next level admiration from everybody else, which doubles down on they know everything and you're just, the worst thing on earth. So I know where you're coming from and I feel for you. I'm sorry for what I know you've been through. Robert was a huge loss for me in my life at that time. He was somebody that I was sneaking around to see. So, there was also that guilt that I was having because I needed to hold on to him, because I also didn't have a lot of people that I trusted, houses that I went to, or people that cared about me. And really, I loved him because I loved his mother. I loved him in my, 4th grade, 5th grade way. But really, the bigger draw in that household, I would say, was his mom. And at that time, the only houses that I went to, other than a house where I babysat, was my best friend, Cindy. And I would go there from time to time. Every now and again, I was allowed to spend the night. Very rarely. She wasn't allowed in my house. Actually, nobody was allowed in my house. Kids were not allowed to come over. Robert, I think, came in my house when I snuck him in a couple of times to show him my house. Cindy, the same thing. And there was one time Cindy was there when my stepfather was caring for me and my mother was out of town, but I didn't have friends over. I literally had 2 houses that I visited. And then I had one, because abusers isolate and they work overtime to make sure that their victims don't have a place to go, unless that place is also going to be destructive, where that child can get into trouble, that sabotaging thing that they do. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for unlocking a little bit of a part of this memory in terms of me recognizing that my mother wasn't just taking away a support system, but she was really, really working overtime to isolate me at a time when I didn't have friends and had difficulty making them. Also, if anybody has any questions or comments that they would like me to respond to, please leave them on this video. I would like to create a name around this series and would love your help in doing that as well. I am going back through comments from the last the last year. So if you've made a comment in the past that you really would like to have responded to, you could say, hey, I commented this on another video. Would you engage with it, kind of thing? And I'll work through them. I'm also trying to make sure that I don't become too repetitive. So sometimes I won't respond to a comment because I've responded to it several times. Like, for example, people will ask, is your mother still alive? She's alive, but she is dead to me. I do have peace in that. Not the same level as I'm sure I will receive when I know she's actually gone. So that's just an example of comments that I get frequently. And I'll do my best to kind of come around here and there and take maybe the most frequently asked questions and create a video around that so that you can find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. I appreciate you, and I appreciate how we're all healing together and supporting one another. This part of my journey has been really incredible, and I just also really want to say thank you. So thank you, and I'll see you soon.